Good day, class! I am Ma'am Ocampo, and together with Ma'am Antonio and Ma'am Diaz, we will have a very interactive yet informative day. But before that, I just want to ask if everyone is doing alright at this time of pandemic. And from that, even we are just here in our virtual world, we will still make this day count. Before we officially start the day, let us entice you with a simple and short activity that will help introduce our lesson for the day. Let me introduce the simple game called Name It to Win It. I will show you pictures that will illustrate the topic for today. There will be 2 hints for the game. First is the description of the word, and second is the shuffled letters of the word. Now, let us begin. As a form of description, it is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. That is excellent, class. Plagiarism will be the center of our discussion. As seen in the presentation, we will tackle about how plagiarism is a big issue and also how to avoid plagiarism. But let us not forget about our previous discussion. Now, as a form of recall in our previous lesson, what was the focus of our discussion last time? Very good. Moving on. Our objective is that at the end of the lesson, 100% of the students will be able to classify the different types and forms of plagiarism. Number 2, to construct an essay to spread awareness about plagiarism. And number 3, to apply the tips on how to avoid plagiarism. So we're expecting that we meet our objective at the end. So now, let us begin. The word plagiarism has a short historic background. It came from a Greek word, plagion, and translated into Latin plagium, which means kidnapping, then became plagiarus, which is translated in English as kidnapper. Then later on, in the early 17th century, became plagiarism. As a form of concrete definition, according to Oxford University, plagiarism is defined as presenting someone else's work or ideas as your own, with or without their consent, by incorporating into your work without full acknowledgement. To proceed, we have the 4 common types of plagiarism. First is the direct plagiarism. It is the word-for-word transcription of someone else's work without attribution and quotation marks. This kind of act is punishable and has the grounds for disciplinary action. Next is self-plagiarism. It is when a student submits own previous work or mixes part of previous work without permission from all of the professor involved. One example is when activities from different subjects or semesters are the same. Students tend to recycle their work, or worse, passing the same work. Next is mosaic plagiarism. It happens when a student borrows phrases from a source without using quotation marks or finds synonyms while keeping the same structure or meaning. Remember that it is also called the patch writing. Lastly, accidental plagiarism. It neglects the responsibility to cite the source or unintentionally paraphrasing sources. Just a reminder, lacking of intent does not absolve the student or anyone of the responsibility for plagiarism. As we proceed, let us have Ma'am Antonio and Ma'am Diaz respectively for the next discussion.
Let's move forward to the different forms of plagiarism. Verbatim or word-by-word quotation. It is when you use the exact same words from the original. Legally, it is okay to use quotation as it is commonly seen on news articles and papers when a specific person said a statement. even in research papers and etc. However, it will be legally incorrect when you do not properly give acknowledgement or citation to the original author or person. Cutting and pasting from the internet. This form of plagiarism has been rising with the introduction of online classes in many schools. Many students, even in my own experiences, are committing to this plagiarism without them being punished by the law. This is actually rampant and alarming at the same time. It is when you copy and paste information from the internet without the proper use of citation or acknowledgement. Paraphrasing is also a popular form of plagiarism, although many people will think that paraphrasing is not plagiarism. But that is the misconception with paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is actually the most popular among any other plagiarism, with the rise of various paraphrasing tools such as Quillbot. Paraphrasing will only become plagiarism when you rewrite someone's ideas as your own. It is okay to paraphrase, but remember that that idea is not yours, and you should probably address the right author to that text. Collusion or unauthorized collaboration between students. It is a form of plagiarism that is commonly misunderstood by many, or they aren't aware of it being actually a plagiarism. It is when two or more individuals collaborate to do a literary work, for example, an essay, and submit that essay as they did it alone. It becomes plagiarism because if that essay is assigned individually, but you all did it as a group and passed the same papers individually with the exact same words and sentences, then it becomes plagiarism. Although sharing of ideas is great and considered okay. To further understand what is collusion, watch this short clip from University of Derby.
Got a really good feeling about the pub quiz tonight.
You say that every time.
Could do with the money right now. Trying to save for a holiday this summer. Is Lucy coming?
I haven't seen her. She's never here to ask these days. Do you remember what it was like when we first moved in together?
I know. Then she met him and it all changed. Can't you do anything without him anymore? It's a bit sad, really.
We should be happy for her. I mean, maybe she's found the one. It's weird. They both go to the same classes at the gym. She's become a vegetarian, and they're always locked in a room doing, you know. Work.
Oh, yeah. They're on that module, aren't they? She told me they work together, then write the same assignment and hand it in.
While the rest of us are busy coming up with our own ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa there! You can't produce an assignment together and submit it as your own work. I mean, it's okay to have a chat about ideas. This sounds like collusion, and that's wrong. It's another form of plagiarism, and it's an academic offence. If you're being asked to do group work, and you're putting all your names to it, now that's different. This girl needs to be careful. She could get herself and her gentleman friend in serious trouble. Interesting.
Inaccurate citation. There are many ways to properly cite an information, but many people still make mistakes in doing it. Inaccurate citation does not only occur when someone forgot the proper citation to use. It is also considered inaccurate when the researchers cite an information from a research paper, for example, but that information is originally from other author, then that is considered plagiarism. Failure to acknowledge assistance. When making a literary work, all acknowledgement or credit must be given, all the help in the making of your work, and even ideas and sentences or text that you used. Failure to do so will result to plagiarism. Use of material written by professional agencies or other person. It is when you use materials without the consent from the agencies or the persons. Lastly, auto-plagiarism is also known as self-plagiarism. As discussed earlier, it is reusing text or attributes without acknowledgement from your previous work. Why does plagiarism matter? Of course, it should matter. As a matter of fact, plagiarism should have the people's perception the same degree as theft, as it is basically a theft, but with many forms. Committing to plagiarism destroys your ethical standards. It also undermines the standard in which many people strictly follows for the sake of clean work. Why do we need to take plagiarism seriously? Well, aside from the fact that it destroys your ethical morality, it is also punishable by law. In the Philippine 1987 Constitution, Republic Act No. 8293, or known as Intellectual Property Code of the Philippines, that aims to protect all intellectual property, under Section 172.2, also known as the Intellectual Property Code, states that works are protected by the sole fact of their creation, irrespective of their mode or form of expression, as well as of their quality and purpose. Under this law, committing to this crime will result to 1 up to 9 years imprisonment with 50,000 pesos up to 1,500,000 pesos fine.
And now let's proceed to the examples of plagiarism. The first one is not crediting a source. Copying text from another source word for word without enclosing original words in quotation marks and including a credit to the original source. You must cite the source even if you incorporate the concepts from the source into your own words. The next one is paraphrasing too closely even if you do credit the source. We all know that you must cite the source when using ideas from another literature, even if you are fully rephrasing them into your own terms. When you paraphrase someone else's work, though, you may be committing a more subtle kind of plagiarism. Even if you cite the source, if you modify the arrangement of words or concepts from the original source and mix in some of your own words with the original words, you are plagiarizing. The third one is using statistics from someone else's work without crediting the source. Those who generated the charts, tables, or figures that appear in a text or in other formats are the owners of the intellectual property. As a result, you must provide a reference to the original creator in your text. You can see that citing the source has a rhetorical advantage as well, because the fact that a published author has come up with figures that back up your statements in your paper supports your argument. The fourth one is using images, photographs, maps, or other illustrative devices without citing sources. Plagiarism would be if you included the image into your writing with your own explanatory text or text obtained from the original source beneath it, but did not acknowledge the original source. Even if you took the shot yourself, it's a good idea to credit yourself as the artist. Any reader will be able to identify the source as the result of this. The next one is buying or copying another person's paper or assignment or hiring an essay writing service to write your paper. Although it should be self-evident that paying someone to produce an essay for you constitutes plagiarism, duplicating elements of someone else's work is equally unethical. Plagiarism may be defined as duplicating a paper or sections of a paper from an essay bank of previous papers or copying old lab reports. The next one is sharing code for a computer program with another student or taking code from the web or another source without citing the source. You should discuss the topic without referring to code while working on a group project that will be evaluated independently. You should not share code with your group members, and you should not look at any aspect of another student's answer, whether on paper or on the computer screen. The next one is downloading material from the internet without proper citation. Although the internet appears to be anarchic and free, the same requirements of proper citation apply to anything available on the web as they do to any written source. It is worth noting that many electronic sources lack page numbers but do include paragraph numbers. If a paragraph number is present, use the Velcro sign or the abbreviation para, or PARA. If neither page nor paragraph is present, if feasible, use section headers. The next one is padding a bibliography or reference list to suggest that you have done research when you haven't. This form of academic dishonesty frequently occurs when students put off writing tasks until the last minute, or when they wish to appear to have done more work than they have. Possibly it is because their professor has specified a minimum number of books and articles in their reference list. However, if we consider plagiarism to be the deliberate attempt to deceive someone about the work you've done, it's easy to see how claiming to have read something you haven't read fits into your category. The ninth and last one is making up statistics or other important facts and citing a false source. This type of fabrication, which involves claiming that the material or source you are using in your article is genuine, is dangerous because it undermines the environment of trust that must exist in academia. If people aren't honest about their findings, their study is worthless and can't be used as a foundation for future research. And now let's proceed to the famous examples of plagiarism cases. The first one is about First Lady Melania Trump. An observer on Twitter remarked shortly after the Republican National Convention's opening night that a tiny piece of her words was strikingly similar to a passage from the First Lady Michelle Obama's speech at the Democratic National Convention in Denver 8 years prior. It's not a perfect match, but the two parts have a lot in common in terms of terminology, structure, and ideas. The Trump campaign sent a statement from Senior Communications Advisor Jason Miller early Tuesday morning. It's impossible to tell if this was an intentional error by campaign speechwriters or a more deliberate act of plagiarism. However, it was evident early on that subsequent outcry would overshadow Melania Trump's national debut. However, at least one well-known Twitter user had nothing but good things to say about the address. Absolutely fantastic, Donald Trump said of his wife's speech and behavior. The second one is about former Vice President Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the former Vice President, has been accused of plagiarism multiple times over the years. When he was in law school, he was expelled for plagiarizing a paper. According to the New York Times, Biden acknowledged in an essay for the Fordham Law Review that he took 5 paragraphs from a published law review paper without quote or acknowledgement. Due to his plagiarism claims, Biden was forced to withdraw from the presidential run in 1988. The third one is about Martin Luther King Jr. Several of Martin Luther King Jr.'s doctoral theses at Boston University, as well as some of his speeches, were allegedly plagiarized in the 1950s. Parts of his thesis were found to have been plagiarized from a former student's dissertation. It is less apparent whether or not his remarks were copied, as it's been suggested that preaching has a tradition of borrowing scripture and other preachers' words. And now let's proceed to the 5 consequences of plagiarism. Plagiarism can have personal, professional, ethical, and legal ramifications. Plagiarists are getting discovered at an alarming rate now that plagiarism detection software is so widely available and used. Once accused of plagiarism, a person will almost certainly be treated with suspicion for the rest of their life. It is not acceptable to offer ignorance as an excuse. Academics, professionals, students, journalists, authors, and others are among the plagiarists. Consequences of plagiarism include: the first one is destroyed student reputation. Allegations of plagiarism might result in student suspension or expulsion. Their academic record may indicate the ethics violation, and the student may be denied admission to college from high school or another institution. Plagiarism is taken very seriously at schools, colleges, and universities. Academic integrity committees are present at almost all educational institutions, and they monitor pupils. For the first offense, many schools punish students. For further offenses, students are generally expelled. For the second one is destroyed professional reputation. Plagiarism may be damaging to a professional business person, politician, or public figure for the rest of their career. They will almost certainly be fired or asked to resign from their current post, and finding another reputable work will be tough. Depending on the nature of the violation and the plagiarist's public profile, the plagiarist's identity may be tarnished, making any significant career difficult. The third one is destroyed academic reputation. Plagiarism's ramifications have been widely highlighted in the academic community. An academic's career might be jeopardized if they are accused of plagiarism. A prestigious academic career necessitates publications. Losing the capacity to publish will almost certainly result in the loss of an academic post and a ruined reputation. The fifth one is legal repercussions. Plagiarism can result in significant legal consequences. The copyright laws are unbreakable. It is illegal to utilize another person's work without citing and referencing it. A plagiarist can be sued by an author. Plagiarism may be considered a criminal violation, resulting in a jail term. Plagiarism is especially common among those who write for a living, such as journalists and novelists. Those who write regularly must be always watchful to avoid making mistakes. Copyright rules and strategies to avoid plagiarism are well known among writers. Plagiarism is a severe ethical and maybe legal concern for a professional writer. The sixth and last one is about monetary repercussions. Plagiarism by journalists, writers, public personalities, and scholars have been uncovered in a number of recent news pieces and publications. When an author sues a plagiarist, the author may be awarded monetary compensation. If a journalist plagiarizes for a magazine, newspaper, or other publication, or even if a student plagiarizes in school, the plagiarist may be forced to pay monetary penalties.
There are 5 ways to avoid plagiarism. Number 1, cite your source. Use citation properly and give the proper persons proper acknowledgement. Don't just cite properly. Second is include quotations. As you are using the exact same text or statement, use quotation marks. Paraphrase carefully and give proper credit is the third one. And the fourth is present your own idea has always been the best to avoid plagiarism. But be careful as some of our ideas are already out there. Or for short, there is already someone who already thought about it and already made it. Lastly, to check if your work or ideas is original, you can use various plagiarism checker such as Grammarly, Plagiarism Detector, and many more.
A helpful tip is that you can use helpful tools, application, or website to avoid plagiarism. One is Scriber, next is Turnitin and Grammarly. Also, you can use different plagiarism checker to double check your work, especially professional papers. But how do plagiarism checkers work? To avoid plagiarism, all content authors must check their work for plagiarism. Before submitting or publishing their works, they must check for copied content. Because they compare your work to other works, these plagiarism detector software are valuable resource. After that, they calculate the percentage of plagiarism and identify the duplicate content so that they can be cited or removed. They also have more resources than a search engine, thus they are able to spot all kinds of duplicate information in a paper without difficulty. Plagiarism must be understood at this degree of thoroughness, since it will prevent it from occurring in the future. To assess if you have realized and learned the significance of plagiarism and how serious it is, let us test it using an activity. You need to construct an essay to be able to spread awareness about plagiarism. Showing you the rubrics of the essay to serve as your guide in making one. You may now proceed in doing it. To summarize the lesson, you need to understand that although plagiarism is considered a kind of theft and a criminal infraction, there are many additional reasons why students should not plagiarize literature. Your most important investment in yourself, says one professor. When you're a student, you should be aware that an article's major goal is to communicate the writer's thoughts and ideas to the readers. And that is genuine concept or ideas connect the reader to the writer. As a form of assessing what you have captured and learned from our discussion, let us have a short quiz using Google Forms.